Hey guys, it's Friday, which means a new rock review. This week our review is going to be on the legendary Foo Fighters. Okay guys, like I said, today we're going to review the Foo Fighters. And for those who don't know the Foo Fighters, it currently consists of 5 members. You have Dave Grohl on lead vocals and rhythm guitar, Chris Shiflett on lead guitar and backing vocals, Taylor Hawkins on drums and backing vocals, Nate Mendel on bass and backing vocals, as well as Pat Smear, who just recently rejoined the group permanently for third guitar part. Now, for those of you who don't know the history behind any of them, Dave Grohl used to be the drummer for the grunge band Nirvana. In 1995, 1 year after the breakup of Nirvana due to the untimely death of Kurt Cobain, Dave Grohl put together a new studio album in which he entitled both the artist and the album Foo Fighters, after the World War II UFO fighting people thing. On this album, all the music work, all the instruments were played by Dave Grohl himself, except for one guitar part on the song Ecstatic, which was played by Greg Dooley from the Afghan Wigs. Every other song on that album was 100% Dave Grohl. Now, when Dave went to make this album, he went to talk to Chris from Nirvana, the bassist for Nirvana. He went to talk to Chris, his good old friend, and they decided, hey, yeah, it would be fun to work together again. However, we don't want everyone thinking this is a Nirvana 2.0, maybe we shouldn't, and so they did not work on the album together. They didn't tour together at all, due to the fact that they just didn't want to be considered a second Nirvana without Kurt. After the release of this album, Dave Grohl decided to put together a small touring group. This group consisted of himself on rhythm guitar and vocals, Pat Smear on lead guitar, Nate Mendel on bass, and William Goldsmith on drums. Now this album has, more of the grunge roots that Grohl had just done for 4 years with the band Nirvana. It was very similar musically to Nirvana, so if you really like that grunge sound, I would definitely recommend this album to you. It does have some softer stuff as well, and a couple, more alternative, but still pretty grunge songs. Some songs I would really recommend from this album include Big Me, which I also recommend you check out the music video. It's really funny. I also recommend This Is a Call and I'll Stick Around. Those are my top 3 choices from this album. All really good styles. Big Me is the most different from the rest of the album. The other two, have a very similar taste to grunge that as Nirvana had. 2 years later, in 1997, the Foos decided to release their sophomore album entitled The Color and the Shape. Now, over the course of recording for this album, they recorded it all, and then Dave sat down listening to them and decided, you know what? I don't like this so much. So what they did was they re-recorded everything. Dave did the drums for all the re-recordings, and supposedly he did this behind William Goldsmith's back, to which William Goldsmith got upset and left the band. So now they had an album, but they lost a drummer. So what they did was Dave called up his buddy Taylor Hawkins and asked Taylor Hawkins if he had any ideas for any good drummers around that could, go on tour with them, join the band and everything. To which Dave was pleasantly surprised when Taylor offered his own services for the band. Now this album is very different from the very first album. It has a much quieter tone to it, much more alternative almost. And the hit songs from this include Everlong, Monkey Wrench, which is the song that personally got me into Foo Fighters and is also featured on Guitar Hero 2. Everlong, that I mentioned before, is featured on both Guitar Hero World Tour as well as Rock Band 2. Now this whole album is also available for downloadable content on Rock Band 2 via the interwebs. Now, other songs that one might enjoy include Up in Arms, which is a really good song if you ask me, as well as if you're into more quieter songs, you're looking for a good, breakup song for when that person dumps you and you're still madly in love with them or whatever. Walking After You is really good. Also, towards the end of the touring for this album, Pat Smear made an announcement that he was going to be leaving the Foo Fighters and announced his replacement, who was Franz Stahl. Now, Franz Stahl was also a former bandmate of Dave Grohl back in the 80s, I believe, in Dave Grohl's, I think it was a punk rock band called Scream. Foo Fighters released their third album in 1999. However, shortly after the beginning of the studio experience, Dave Grohl and Franz Stahl decided that they worked in completely different creative areas, leading to Stahl leaving the band. So, the rest of the band, consisting of Taylor Hawkins, Dave Grohl, and Nate Mendel, went and they finished recording the album by themselves, but then they were, looking for a touring guitarist to add to the band for live shows and such, and that's when Chris Shiflett enters the picture. Chris Shiflett left his band, There Is No Need for a Name, in order to join the Foo Fighters. And now the style of this album is much more of the alternative rock, slower rock style for a good portion of it. Some hit songs from this album include Breakout, which was also featured on the Me, Myself, and Irene soundtrack, Learn to Fly, which is playable on the first Rock Band game, as well as Stacked Actors from Guitar Hero Metallica, and let's not forget the less known song Aurora. 3 years later, the Foo released their fourth album, One by One. Now, something to note is the fact that the band does not like this album. Dave Grohl has stated that he likes 4 of the songs, and he has never played any of the other songs in this album. Now, I rank it about second to last out of all the albums. I'll admit I'm not a big fan of their self their self-titled album, Foo Fighters, but this one barely beats it overall. But some of the big hits are All My Life, Times Like These, Low, and then one of my personal favorites of the album, Lonely As You. Now, this album also has a much heavier sound than a lot of their other stuff. It's getting closer to that hard rock sound with this album. It's nothing like their previous albums, really. You might be able to notice some similarities between this and Stacked Actors from the previous album, but that's about it. Now we get to my favorite album. In Your Honor consists of 2 discs, and it was released in 2005. Each disc has a very different style of music. The first disc is very upbeat, electric, very pump-up guitar work with songs such as Best of You, DOA, which is probably my personal favorite from the album, along with the album title song, In Your Honor, as well as End Over End, all of which I highly recommend to each one of you. But then you get to their second disc, which is an acoustic disc which is very, very moving at times. It's got songs such as Over and Out, Cold Day in the Sun, which actually features Dave Grohl on drums, and Taylor Hawkins is the one singing on that one. So that's very different, very good though. Now, shortly after the release of this 2-disc album, they of course went all over the place touring, including Hyde Park in the UK, but also they played a show in LA. It was an acoustic show. All they did was play acoustic songs throughout, but they also took some of their electric songs, converted them to acoustic versions, and played those as well. Very well done if you ask me, and I definitely recommend it. They have acoustic versions of My Hero, which features an amazing piano solo about 2/3 into the end, along with an acoustic version of Everlong, which blows my socks off. It's a million times better. than the electric version found in The Color and the Shape, as well as an acoustic version of Best of You. Now, this live show also was featured on a DVD and their very first live CD, Skin and Bones. I definitely recommend you check it out. It's also a nice way to get to know the band. Dave takes a lot of time to tell different stories about the band, tell how he ended up with Nirvana, and some of the history behind some of the songs as well. It's very good, very interesting overall, and it helps you feel closer to the band, in my opinion. 2007, the Foos released their latest full-length studio album, Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace. Now, this album is very different than the previous ones, in the fact that it kind of mixes acoustic and electric guitar more than previous albums, with songs such as Let It Die, Come Alive, and But Honestly. Now, not to say that that's what the entire album is. It also has heavy hitters such as The Pretender, Cheer Up Boys, Your Makeup Is Running, as well as Long Road to Ruin. Now, the music video for Long Road to Ruin is actually very entertaining, much like the one for Breakout from the album There's Nothing Left to Lose. Now, this album, Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace, got 5 Grammy nominees for the very first album, The Pretender, and as well as got the Best Rock Album at the Grammys, along with Best Hard Rock Performance for their performance of The Pretender. Now, since 2007 and 2009, the record company decided that it was time to release something new, so they released the Greatest Hits album. Now, Dave Grohl didn't really like this idea very much, especially with the track listing they chose. They went with a lot of their singles, and Dave Grohl has been quoted as saying that, this is our Greatest Hits album, but it's not necessarily our best songs album. I mean, we're missing songs like A320, which is actually featured on the 1998 Godzilla soundtrack. Ain't It the Life, I'll Stick Around. He goes on to list several more songs, and so this song is, if you want to start getting into the Foo Fighters, it's a pretty good sample, but it's not all their best songs once again. However, with this was released a couple of new songs, including Wheels, which is very reflective on the Foo's lifespan of 15 years, seeing where they've been, as well as Word for Word, which is very, very catchy and very entertaining at the same time. One other song that I would recommend by the Foo Fighters, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I do personally. It's called The One. It was featured on the Orange County soundtrack. It's very catchy in my opinion, very interesting. Definitely watch the music video for it. You won't be disappointed. It has Dave Grohl trying to act. It has Taylor Hawkins trying to play the violin. Nate Mendel is trying to be a mime, and Chris Shiflett learning ballet. Very entertaining, very, very, very pump-up music, very, very fun. Okay, besides all this, other songs I definitely recommend for you to try out include Next Year from the album There's Nothing Left to Lose. It's a very slow song, and towards the end it just gets really repetitive, which can get really annoying, but at the same time, if you're looking for a song to dance to, it's a perfect one for that, guys. So overall, what do I think of the Foos? Well, I say Foos are my #1 band, definitely. And in my opinion, Dave Grohl and the band as a whole is legend. Wait for it. Dairy. That's the rock review for the week. Take care. Don't forget to leave more band suggestions for me to check out down in the comment section just below. You take care. Rock out.